I will ask to Abebe to switch the audio. Let me try that from here. Okay. Then and thanks a lot for the first speakers and the first speakers. And now we go to the second speaker, Daniel Ava. You're already showing your presentation. Please go ahead. Daniel? Let me see. You are mute. Okay.
It means that basically we just rewrite the parameters so that the parameters that get estimated from the model are directly the willingness to pay for each attribute and the willingness to pay for the alternative specific constant. So
good afternoon, can you hear me?
Daniel, are you?
Yes,
okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
The standard errors at the village level.
So good afternoon from Nigeria.
Oh, let me see. There is some voice behind. Okay, go ahead, please.
We're making a presentation on trends of wood fuel production and consumption and the energy matrix in Nigeria from 1990 to 2020 and the corresponding impact on household poverty level. Okay, the prime place and relevance of energy in human lives can never be overemphasized. It is both crucial and central to all aspects of economic growth, progress, and development, as well as poverty eradication and security for every nation. Wood fuel is a vital source of energy to both rural and urban dwellers in developing countries, and it occupies a unique position in rural energy systems. Wood fuel refers to any energy source that comes from woody biomass. They include firewood, charcoal, industrial firewood, firewood, wood pellets, biogas, and other advanced forms of wood fuel energy. In Nigeria, wood fuel is also an important fuel for many rural industries, which satisfy the basic human needs and account for over 70% of total energy used by households in Nigeria, as according to EYME 2008. The demand for wood fuel in Nigeria urban area has been increasing, so also as it is in rural areas, due to the fact that other sources of energy are experiencing hike in price. Now, this has pushed many households down the energy ladder. And some other reasons that have accounted for the increase in wood fuel consumption is also the increase in population, which has made that majority of the populace are going for cheaper alternatives, which are also as a result of poverty, as we have mentioned. Now, access to energy is essential for economic and social development. That is why no country develops beyond subsistence economy without ensuring at least minimum access to energy services for a broad section of its population. Now, it is glaring from what we've established that the household energy dynamics in Nigeria is shrouded with complex issues, pertinent among which is poverty. And this study therefore sets out to examine the trend of wood fuel production and consumption and their corresponding impact on poverty level in Nigeria. And the study was carried out in Nigeria. Nigeria has a total geographical area of about 923,768 square kilometers, consisting a land mass of about 910,768 square kilometers and water area of 13,000 square kilometers respectively. Now, currently with a population growth rate of 2.6%, Nigeria has a projected population of about 206 million in 2020 and a projected population of about 264 million in the year 2030. Now, we are giving the basis for the population growth rate to buttress our point that one of the factors that has made for the increased consumption of wood fuel is the increase in population. Nigeria is a country with large fuel deficit zones, mainly in the north, while in southern areas, production exceeds consumption. This according to Ogbonna in 1991. Now, these areas supply the deficit zones. Therefore, a balance between annual regrowth and consumption has to be struck on a national basis. Now, this is a map of Nigeria showing the study area. Method of data collection. The study relied basically on secondary data, annual time series data were sourced from the archives of Federal Food and Agriculture Organization database and the National Bureau of Statistics. This is majorly an econometric analysis. We rely on the use of majorly econometric tools to analyze our data. The data collected and analyzed using both descriptive and inferential statistics, such as trend model, the impulse response function, and the vector autoregression model. Now, this is the model that was specified for the study, where our YT is our wood fuel production, consumption, or poverty rate in year T, and why the Y naught represent the variables in the base year. R is the compound growth rate of each of the variables, and T is the time in chronological years. Now, the other formulas express how we, now this is for the growth model to show for each of the respective variables. Now, linearizing each of the variables will make us have equation 2 and equation 3. And equation 3 was a growth rate model that is developed for the study, where our beta stands for the instantaneous growth rate. But when we multiply our beta by 100, it gives us our instantaneous growth rate. All right, now these are our results. We begin by looking at the trend of firewood production in Nigeria. From the graph, you see that firewood production has been increasing over the years at a very high rate in Nigeria. Starting from the year the study began looking at it from 1990 to 2020. The graph shows to you that it has been experiencing a geometric growth over the year. Now, this is synonymous to the trend of firewood consumption. Now, this, if you observe closely, you will discover that the trend for firewood production and consumption are related. It means that for every quantity of firewood that is generated in Nigeria, correspondingly it has been produced, which shows that there is a pressure on wood fuel and on fuel generally. And that is why Nigeria over the years, there has been the issue of deforestation, because wood fuel, as we established earlier, is gotten from wood, from trees. So in order to meet the consumption, there is an increasing pressure on trees, because they are the sources of wood fuel. So the two graphs are very similar, because all the wood fuel that has been produced in Nigeria have correspondingly been consumed. All right, now this is a trend of poverty in Nigeria. You see that poverty in Nigeria is a recurring decimal, and though it has stagnated over the years, but you see that the issue of poverty in Nigeria is still quite high. And according to the National Bureau of Statistics, as of the year 2020, Nigeria has about 40% of our population still residing in poverty, which is a cause for concern. Now, this is a growth rate and direction of the variables used in the study. If you see the trend shows this shows for the growth rate, while this shows for the direction of the growth rate. And if you look closely, the trend, the growth rate and the direction of the growth rate for both firewood consumption and production are very similar. And as I established earlier, it is because the rate of production has been equal to the rate of of consumption. And that is because there has been a pressure on wood fuel over the years. Now, but poverty level, you see that it is growing at a rate of 1.9% over the years. Now, this is a more simplified table to buttress what I began to say earlier. Now, the instantaneous growth rate for both firewood production and consumption has been 1.5%. It shows that the demand for wood fuel over the years has been increasing 1.5%, although the direction of the growth rate has shown a decelerated growth, but the growth rate has been increasing. Now, the compound growth rate shows that the growth rate of both wood fuel production and consumption is about 3.51%. Now, poverty rate in Nigeria, the instantaneous growth rate is 1.9%, while the compound growth rate is 4.47%, which shows that the issue of poverty in Nigeria is quite alarming. Now, following econometric procedures, we will have to establish the basis for the tools we are using, and that is why one of the first criteria is to check for the unit root of the variables that we are using, of all our variables. We applied the augmented Dickey-Fuller test to check for the unit root of the variables. Now, our results shows that at level 1, all the variables were not significant, and so they became significant at first differencing. Now, it shows that they exhibit a stationary walk after the first difference. Now that led us to carry out a co-integration among the variables in order to establish if there is a long-run relationship among the variables. Now, but from the result of our co-integration, we observed that because the trace statistics shows that at most one was less than this. So the implication of this result is that these variables are not co-integrated. There's no long-run relationship among them. So instead of using the VECM, we apply the vector autocorrection model for this analysis. Now the result shows that the VECM, what the VECM does is that it models the effect of each of the variables against themselves. So we begin by looking at our poverty. We see that though not statistically significant, poverty had a negative effect on fuel wood consumption and also on fuel wood production. Now the implication of this is that as poverty level increases in Nigeria, there will be more demand for fuel wood. Now the same thing applies to the model for both fuel wood consumption and fuel wood production. Now this is the impulse response function for each of the variables. We see that when poverty, for a unit shock of poverty against itself, we see that poverty was decreasing in the short run until it became asymmetrical in the long run. Now, but our emphasis in the impulse, now this was done using the impulse response function. And our emphasis using the impulse response function is on the effect of poverty on fuel wood consumption and the effect of poverty on fuel wood production. Now, this shows that for every one standard deviation innovation shock of poverty on fuel wood consumption, although the effect is minimal, it hovered around 0.1% all through the study period, both in the short run and in the long run. But it shows that poverty had an effect on fuel wood consumption in Nigeria. So also applies to the production. And we established earlier that the issue of fuel wood consumption has been pronounced by the activity, by the effect of poverty in Nigeria. Now we'll conclude by saying that the use of wood fuel as one of the major sources of household energy in Nigeria is poverty related as evidence from this study. Therefore, there is a need for a robust policy to be put in place towards reducing the incidence of poverty through the provision of social security, insurance schemes, and policies that will improve the living condition of vulnerable groups, most especially rural households, who are the major consumers of wood fuel in Nigeria. Now, for the sake of this study, we didn't bother to look at the comparison between the consumption from rural households and urban households, but it's been empirically established that rural households are the chief consumers of wood fuel in Nigeria. Now, these are the recommendations from the study. Number one, we recommended that access to affordable and reliable energy sources will help in reducing poverty and enhancing sustainable management of natural resources in Nigeria. Now, this is because we pointed out earlier that deforestation has been on the increase, which in the long run will lead to ecosystem instability if it continues in this manner. And that is why we are saying that when there is access to affordable and reliable energy sources, to help in not just reducing poverty, but to enhance sustainable management of natural resources in Nigeria. Number two, we recommended that there is a need for improvement of household purchasing power through the implementation of schemes that can increase household income level in a manner that will encourage them to use easily accessible and durable energy sources. And finally, we recommended that government and other stakeholders in the energy sector should formulate policies that will foster the use of modern fuels, thereby facilitating the upward movement of households to cleaner energy sources. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you so much, Daniel. I will be a discussant of this paper. I have to first apologize. I didn't prepare a presentation on that. I just used to do that in the other conferences from my own topic, but I will make some comments and send you by email the comments. Don't worry. Then my question is twofold. Perhaps it's better that you stay with the presentation on sharing the presentation. First, well, you make some analysis of the growing of the movement of the time series regarding poverty level. And I was wondering, why do you do that if I don't see any kind of regular movement up or down in this variable? This is one question I was wondering when I saw you were capturing the growth rate of this variable. This is a technical one. Perhaps you can try to justify in the paper why you are doing that, because the variable doesn't seem to move up or down. Then the second question is more, or second and third question is more related to the conclusions and the links you are addressing. You are in this paper making many different techniques to relate the three underlying series. And then my impression is the following one. I don't see clearly in the paper where do you put the strongest relations between the variables you are dealing with. This is important because you have plenty of them saying there is no relation. And then perhaps you have to make an effort in this paper to say where do you see the relation is more strong, or what is more significant from the mathematical or from the modeling point of view. Perhaps my impression was you are stressing that the relation is uncovered in the question on the part of the VA regression or on the part of the shocks. Perhaps this is my understanding, but this has to be stressed on the paper because the other ones are not clear message. And the last one is also related with that, and it's regarding the recommendations you are mentioning. I mean, if I read the recommendations, they are all, for me, make sense. They, for me, are of course very important to make, but I don't see clearly where is the link between the recommendations you are saying and the results you are obtaining in your regressions and your coefficients. And this is what I mean could or should be stressed. Where do you see that these kind of results are asking for this kind of recommendation? This is something that can improve the understanding of your results and the understanding of the link with the recommendations. And the last comment, you mentioned that there are some geographical difference between in the country regarding production and consumption, and I wonder if this can be somehow included in the discussion. Perhaps you don't have the data at this level, but you should perhaps say that. Okay, this was my comments.
Thank you very much. I struggled to hear the comments sincerely. I've been straining my ears to hear the comments, but sincerely, I can't hear the comments. I don't know if you can come again, please.
Okay, can you perhaps share the position again? Then I can point you exactly where I was looking for something to say. Can you please again? Can you please again show your position, your slides? Daniel?
Okay, the slide.
Okay, just go to the trends. Just stop there. Stop there. Okay, first, a short comment. I was missing the units on the levels, but this is not very important. The growth, the poverty level trend.
This?
Yes, this one. My first comment was the following one. I see this series, and I don't see as clear as the other ones that you have a trend from any way. And then you are after the paper asking for the trend to this series. And my point was, well, you have to perhaps justify what is this parameter saying at all, because the series is not showing a clear trend. This is my first recommendation, just to justify a little bit more why you are asking for the trend for this series. The second one is related to the results, and perhaps we can go to the conclusions and to the recommendations. Okay, first the conclusions. You see, you are saying here that you have a clear relationship, And my point was the following one: you are doing a lot of technical and econometric technique to study the series, and some of them are not giving any evidence, and some of them are giving evidence what you are here claiming. And my point was, perhaps you should, I'm speaking now from the paper, perhaps you should make an effort to make clear where is the evidence strongest, where you see that this relationship is more clearly noticed. My impression was this is more in the part of the VA regression and in the part of the shock analysis. And this has to be stressed, because somewhere because you have so many tools, and some of them are not giving you advice. For instance, speaking about co-iteration, then you have to be clear where is the evidence coming from. And the last one, just switch please to the recommendation. These are recommendations. I completely agree with them. I see they are, for me, they are more natural one, but what I don't see and what I think it should be stressed in the paper is where is the link between the results you are having and this kind of recommendations, or where are you making some assumptions, or are you making some ideas that has to be done, but the link to the results is missing from it. This was these were my three points.
Okay, thank you very much. So the first one was to explain this trend, right?
Yes.
Okay, now we began saying that that we are looking at the trend of the various variables, both fuelwood consumption, production, and poverty level. So we needed to establish what has been the poverty level in Nigeria. Now this shows the percentage of the population that is living below the poverty rate in Nigeria. And so the graph for the various years, starting from the year 1990 to 2020, shows the various level, the various percentage of the population of Nigeria that has been living below the poverty line. So the fluctuations just shows for the various years the movement and on the changes in the percentage of the population of Nigeria that has been living below the poverty line. I don't know if that is clear. Okay, and I got your other inputs. They are very brilliant, but thank you very much for the inputs. But let me say that we employed, as I began to say earlier, and I think it took note of that too, that we employed various econometric procedures, and though some of them were not showing that they were significant, but if you look at the effect of poverty level on fuelwood consumption, where you see, though it is not big, because we began to say earlier that poverty is not the only determinant of fuelwood consumption in Nigeria. But for the sake of this study, we are trying to look at how it relates to poverty. Now, we began to say earlier that the hike in price of all other energy sources is also a contributing factor, perhaps, which other study may look at, may look into. Then the population pressure, the increase in population, we began to talk about during the methodology. But if you see, the impulse response function shows us that though this is a minimal effect, for everyone, one standard deviation innovation shock, it shows that though it is minimal, but it is hovering around 0.1% thereabout throughout the period, both in the long run and in the short run. So we feel that that has given us an evidence in the study that poverty affects fuelwood consumption and production in Nigeria. And we began to say earlier that if you look at the trend, maybe let me show that briefly, that why these trends are on the upward movement and projection. It's because people are coming to people are running to wood fuel because they are cheaper. And it is much more readily available. So our trend also portrays the fact that yes, it has been on the increase. It has been on the increase. So I think that has given us an evidence from the study that it is energy related. Okay, then thank you very much for the input on the recommendation. But our recommendation was from general to specific. We tried to look at what are some of the issues surrounding the energy matrix in Nigeria. What are some of the issues surrounding them, and as it relates to poverty thereabout? And that is why our recommendations are not just specific, but from general to specific. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Daniel. Okay, we have time for a couple of questions. I see no one has put any question in the chats, but if anyone has a question, you can just write it now, or we are going to switch to the next speaker. Okay. Okay, I don't see any movement in the chats. Then let's then start with the next speaker, which is Jennifer Meyer. Please, Daniel, can you turn off your presentation? Stop sharing the. Okay. Now, hi Jennifer. Are you prepared?
I am. Just give me a second to get these slides.
Go ahead.
1 second. Sorry. Okay. Can you see the slides okay? I'll assume that's yes. Okay, thanks to everyone for attending this session today. I'm going to be presenting some preliminary work from my co-authors Ipsita Das and Mark Juland on gendered time-saving benefits of LPG fuel use. And this is actually a follow-up from a flash talk that I did at the Study of the Need seminar conference last year. And this paper is still in a fairly preliminary analysis phase, so we really do welcome comments and suggestions on how to move forward with our analysis. So, as you all probably know, LPG stoves have been touted as being a much cleaner alternative than cooking with traditional fuels. And despite the potential benefits, LPG has traditionally suffered from low adoption and usage rates. And the literature has isolated a number of factors contributing to this low adoption and use, such as affordability constraints, liquidity constraints, and household knowledge factors. And the PMUY scheme in India heavily subsidizes LPG fuel for women, but even despite these subsidies, the use of LPG still remains quite low, with some evidence that households still display price sensitivity to the sticker price of LPG cylinder refills, even though there is a rebate offered. So we and others posit that gender could be playing a role in low adoption and use rates. And in this paper, we seek to quantify differential benefits by gender. So if more benefits accrue to women, but men have purchasing power, then that power imbalance may help explain low adoption and use rates. And in this paper, we seek to explore how time-saving benefits specifically differ by gender. So there has already been some research examining the relationship between gender and fuel use. First, men and women have differential preferences for stove, with women expressing more preference for health-improving stoves than men. And indeed, more bargaining power for women is often correlated with higher demand for LPG stoves. And these differential preferences may in part be due to the fact that it appears that there are differential health benefits to switching from solid fuels. Since girls and women tend to be primary cooks in many low-income countries, there's growing literature showing that cooking with solid fuels disproportionately has worse health impacts on women and girls than boys and men. So this project builds on this existing literature by quantifying the differential gendered time-saving benefits of fuel collection and comparing households relying on solid fuels to households using LPG. So time savings for improved fuels could come from two sources: reduced cooking time and reduced solid fuel collection time. And in this paper, we focus on the latter. So we're not looking at cooking time, we're just looking at fuel collection. And the literature on fuel use and time savings is actually quite sparse. There's one peer-reviewed paper, Brooks et al., that found that LPG saved households roughly 105 minutes per day in solid fuel collection time. However, this paper estimated total household time savings and did not disaggregate these time savings by benefit. Give me 1 second. Sorry, something's popping up for this. Okay. Sorry about that. Okay. Basically, to sum up our research question, we are asking, how does LPG fuel use affect fuel collection time? And are there differential time-saving effects by gender? So we use 2 different data sources to explore this question. And using these data sources, we compare LPG using households to non-LPG using households. And since there's an obvious selection problem here, that LPG using households are going to be systematically different than non-LPG using households, we use a variety of quasi-experimental methods to account for that potential selection. And finally, we estimate the effect of LPG use on reported fuel collection time for both men and women, so we can see the differential gender effect. And here's the summary of our 2 data sources. Our first data source, the India Human Development Survey, is a panel data set. We're using 2 waves that were collected between 2004 to 2005, and the second was collected 2011 to 2012. It's a nationally representative data set, and the balanced panel is roughly 25,000 households. Our secondary data set is a primary data set that we collected in Orissa, India in 2016 of just over 1,000 households. And we use both data sources to get at this question because they have relative advantages and disadvantages. IHDS is a much larger and more representative sample, but the Orissa data set has finer data on some variables of interest. So for LPG fuel use, the Orissa data set has information about the intensity of fuel use, whereas IHDS just has a binary measure. And similarly for fuels for which collection time is measured, IHDS just focuses on solid fuels, whereas the Orissa data set also asks the collection time of LPG. In some places, LPG cylinders are delivered to the household, but in the district that we worked with in Orissa and many other districts, oftentimes households will go to a marketplace to purchase their LPG cylinder refills. So there's a time cost to collecting LPG in those cases. So I'm first going to present the data and summary for the Orissa data set before going to the IHDS data set. So you can see that almost all households in this sample report using solid fuels, and just over 10% use LPG.
Okay.
So, Abebe, can you please?
Mhm.
Okay, thanks. Right. So you can also see that the time cost of solid fuel collection is high, with households spending about 32 hours per month collecting solid fuels. And to compare LPG using households with non-LPG using households, we use a kernel propensity score matching approach. And we define LPG use as any reported LPG use in the past month. And we match LPG households to non-LPG households on a number of variables that are known to affect LPG adoption. And then we use the weights generated from that matching procedure to estimate average treatment effects on the treated of LPG fuel collection by gender. And so here we show the matching results, and I've highlighted the variables that were not balanced between LPG and non-LPG households before the matching procedure. And you can see that after matching, our covariates are fairly well balanced with the one exception of household size. So we have pretty good confidence that the matching procedure worked to create a more balanced comparison between the LPG and non-LPG households. And here are our main treatment effects. We find no significant time savings for either females or males for solid fuel collection time. So this goes against our hypothesis, but this could be, as you remember, that so many households, over 97%, are still using solid fuels. So there's obviously a fuel stacking trend happening in this sample. But turning to our LPG collection time, obviously LPG households spend significantly more time than non-LPG households because non-LPG households have no reason to collect LPG cylinders. But what is more interesting here is that comparing those coefficients between females and males, we find that males spend significantly more time collecting LPG cylinders than females. And this makes sense because in the district that we worked with in Orissa, often households travel to a central market by scooter or bicycle to obtain the cylinders, and men more often take on that task. So here we're actually finding a time cost of switching to LPG that is stronger for men than women. And we repeat the matching procedure defining LPG use as daily LPG use rather than monthly LPG use to see if that affects our results, and we find qualitatively similar results. So now we turn to our IHDS analysis. And again, here's the summary of the IHDS data. Roughly 81% of households in wave 1 use solid fuels and 34% used LPG. And while LPG use increased considerably between those waves, solid fuel use did not really decline, again, indicating fuel stacking. And the time burden of collecting solid fuels is particularly high for women who spend 20 minutes per day and 12 minutes per day in wave 1 and wave 2 respectively. And here our empirical strategy is to use the fixed effects model where our variable of interest is whether the household uses LPG fuel. And we control for many time varying household characteristics. And then because it's a panel data set, we can use household fixed effects to allow us to control for time invariant factors. And our results here indicate that both men and women save time on solid fuel collection in LPG households. However, there is no significant difference between these coefficients, suggesting that time-saving benefits do not differentially accrue more to women than men in this sample. Now, obviously, IHDS is representing all of India, and there's a lot of heterogeneity. So we also use state-level analyses with the IHDS dataset to explore this heterogeneity and time-saving benefits across states. And one potential reason for the different effects between our Orissa dataset and IHDS is that the IHDS is averaging effects over a very large sample, and there is, of course, heterogeneity across states in terms of fuel use and availability. So we exploit this large IHDS dataset and run multiple regressions by state using the same empirical specification and adding district-level fixed effects. And what you can see here is that even with the IHDS data set, we do not find time-saving benefits of LPG for men nor women in Orissa. So this is the Orissa state, and in both the men and women samples, we don't find a statistically significant effect. So that matches what we found with our Orissa-only data set. However, what you can see is that we're in the states that there are effects, they vary significantly by states, but the trend seems to be that with some exceptions, it appears that states that do have time-saving benefits of LPG use, that benefit is generally larger for women than men. So when we look at the state analysis, we are finding some suggestive evidence that time-saving benefits at the state level might be larger for women than men. So our next steps are we'd like to dig a little deeper into the potential mechanisms for why we observe time-saving benefits for women in some places and not others. And we posit that fuel stacking is probably playing a really large role here. In the Orissa data set, nearly all households report using solid fuels, whereas in the IHDS sample, fuel stacking is much less common. So the next step for us is to explore how the degree of fuel stacking affects our estimates. And this is where we really are seeking feedback. So the Orissa survey asks for estimates of quantity of fuel use. These are self-reports, but also since it's a small sample, it's really difficult to incorporate into matching. It's going to be difficult to do a generalized propensity score matching with our small sample size. And unfortunately, IHDS does not ask about intensity or quantity of fuel use. So we're thinking about other ways to use state level variation to get at some potential stacking mechanisms. So to wrap up, we provide some evidence that LPG use provides time savings in terms of solid fuel collection from the IHDS dataset, though we don't see a large significant difference between men and women. And where we don't see time-saving benefits, we think that fuel stacking is probably the important factor. And then we also find this from the ERISA data set that LPG cylinder collection actually produces a larger time burden on men than women. So like I said, our next steps are to think about how to incorporate measures of fuel stacking into our analysis, and I welcome any questions or feedback that you have.
Thank you so much, Jennifer, for the presentation. The discussant of this paper is Abebe, and I will ask Abebe to take the word and make his discussion. Abebe, can you hear us? You are mute.
Can you hear me?
Yes, there's some music
Some kind, yeah.
around, but
I'm afraid of the electricity connection. Sorry for the disturbance. Yeah, yeah. Thank you, Mayor. This is really very nice piece of work. Some of my comments are, instead of using two different types of data sets, which are not really, in my opinion, useful for the purpose of analyzing, the impact of LPG. Why don't you focus instead on one of these two household surveys and do more analysis? Like if you depend on the cross section, you can take into account selection on observables by using the switching regression methods instead of focusing on the matching method simply, or either use the panel data, and if the data allows you check the dynamics, that's also important. You have a problem like what I presented earlier. Define LPG use as any reported household use of LPG fuel in the past months, but past months may not be a month that reflects actual behavior of households. There is a seasonal variation of fuel use. So how do you try to incorporate these concerns in your analysis? I mean, maybe use of panel data or collection of more data in the past, so that you can take the average, like what I did in our electricity paper. You argue about the fuel stacking issue, and that is interesting, but still maybe better to conduct more analysis on what really determines fuel stacking, and how this LPG plays a role in energy transition, or still households depend on using both solid fuels and modern fuels. The current argument seems based on the descriptive statistics. If I missed something, sorry for that too. Probably another minor comment is maybe better to use also different specifications for the matching, so that you can check the robustness of your results. And also in the paper, I haven't seen any kind of sensitivity analysis, whether your results are very sensitive to any bias, hidden bias or not. Otherwise, the paper is interesting. Thank you.
So Jennifer, do you want to?
Yeah, sure. Thank you for those comments. It would also be really helpful to receive them over email. I was struggling to hear everything with the background noise, but I tried to write down what I could hear. But thank you for reading the paper. Yeah, we did use both data sets because, again, like I said in the beginning, they just both have different advantages and disadvantages to being able to answer the question. And so we thought that by using both, we'd be able to paint a more holistic picture than if we just relied on one or the other. But I agree that we need to go a little deeper into the analysis, and appreciate your feedback on ways we might do that. I'm not sure I think you said switching regression methods for ERISA. If by that you mean like a Heckman two-step, we have done that and we find similar results. But if there are other analysis ideas you have, I am open to hear those. And also, yes, we'll definitely work on building in more robustness checks with different specifications for the matching. That's something that we need to do. Yeah, beyond that, I would love to receive your comments over email if you're able to send them. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. We have time for a couple of questions. I have seen there is one question in the chat. I will listen. I will read it for everybody. It says, "Interesting. Any differences on girl and boy collection time?" Let me just please switch the okay. Okay. The question is, any differences on girl and boy collection time? Any idea what proportion of firewood are collected, used for cooking and other activities?
Yeah, so this is both great questions. With the ERISA data, we haven't done the analysis on the ERISA data by girl and boy, but with IHDS we have. And we don't see large differences in the girl and boy collection times. So their collection times are much smaller than the adult women and men. So finding a significant effect there is harder for that difference, but we don't see a difference in the IHDS. And then what proportion of firewood are collected, used for cooking and other activities. So in the IHDS, we don't have that. This is why we're using both data sets, because some have some things and some don't have other things. And so using both kind of helps us triangulate the puzzle a little bit. But what proportion of firewood are collected, used for cooking and other activities? We have self-reports in the ERISA data set that we haven't utilized so far because self-reported data here can be not the best, but that's something we could certainly look into, especially as we're examining fuel stacking and cooking. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Any other question? You can put it on the chat and share with us, and then we can address that. Is actually, I don't see any reaction, and if this is not the case, we are finished with our session. Let me just remind you that there are 3 other sessions still going on, and then we have a social activity in 12:40 in the Garo town, and please don't miss the opportunity to go there and interact to each other. Okay, thank you so much. We are finishing our session, and yes, thank you to the speakers, and thank you to the discussants, and thank you all of you for being here. Bye bye. Thanks, Awa. I got the email. I'll send you the comments in a couple of hours or tomorrow, perhaps. Okay. Hi, Cristobal. We are finished here.
Hi, everyone. It was a very good session. I've been like looking at all the sessions at a time. Yeah, I think there's only 2 people. Well, we invite you to move to the other panel sessions already. And at 12:40, we have a social activity that you may also have access through the links in the document.
Okay.
So thank you, Walter. I talk to you.
Okay. Bye bye.